What's poppin'? What's poppin'? How's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of Life According to Rick. I hope everybody had an amazing Thanksgiving, that y'all was able to enjoy some good food and some quality family time. Now, regarding to the holidays, listen, I don't know what type of background you got, but me personally, I'm Dominican, my wife is Puerto Rican, so when it comes to like Thanksgiving and Christmas and the holidays, like things can get a little chaotic. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like nothing more stressful than Thanksgiving and the preparation and getting everything ready. We was hosting and we had some guests coming in, staying with us for the holidays, and so you already know, just getting the house in order, and I personally was in charge of seasoning the pernil, and so like I had to get it ready, and then I overslept the day of Thanksgiving putting it into the oven. So just stressful times, but it was some good food. So I hope y'all enjoy yourselves. And let's jump right into this. So today's episode is called Instructions Not Included. Why is it called Instructions Not Included? Well, guess what? When you become a parent, we don't have a booklet or a manual like telling us how to do this whole parenting thing. It's kind of like learn as you go, right? And so if we're getting into me being a single father and raising my kids by myself, I definitely had no instruction booklet. And, people can give you advice and, kind of give you their opinions on certain things, but it's not till like you actually live in it is that, you're gonna learn if you're doing this right thing or not. And unfortunately, there's gonna be mistakes down the road, but that's all part of the learning process. Now, as I had mentioned before, I have five kids, right? My oldest son is Andy. He's 26. He just recently became a father himself. There's little Ricky, who will be 25. My daughter Kiana, she's 23. My daughter Layla, who lives in New York, she's 16. And then baby Harley, who will be a teenager in literally less than 2 weeks, which is super crazy. Oh, y'all probably thinking like, damn, Rick, five kids? That's a lot of kids. It kind of sounds like it, right? To kind of put things into retrospect, when I first met my kid's mother, I was 17, and my son Andy, biologically, he's not my son. But I raised him since he was 2 months old, and I kind of took that responsibility, to help raise him. And blood couldn't make us any closer. Like, that's my son, he's my kid's older brother, and to me, there's no change in my mind. Like, I love him like I love all my kids, right? Because that's my son. So he kind of like helped me become a father because I was learning, raising this child that wasn't my own. To give a quick little background, I grew up with my grandmother. She raised me. I lived with my mom when I was at a very young age, but I would always spend time with my grandmother. And so, my father was in and out, not that he was an absent parent, but my father had his own things going on, and that's probably a story for another day. But with that being said, I made a promise to myself that the day that I would become a father, like I would always be there. Life is all about perception. I could have, took it and been a shitty father, right? Because my father wasn't around or whatever the case was. But no, I decided to go the other route and, do the right thing and be there for my children regardless of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Being present. Am I a perfect father? Absolutely not. Um, I don't think that anybody's perfect. We all make mistakes as parents, And that's just something that we learn, and we learn from our mistakes and try to correct it. um and that's all that we can do. So when I moved out here to take responsibility of the kids, it put me in a weird position, only because obviously, because Andy's not biologically my son, I couldn't take him to live with me. Like, I couldn't get full custody of him, right? So he had to stay living with his grandmother while his two younger siblings had to come live with me. And then here's where the plot thickens, right? So when I was living in New York, I was, with Layla's mom, and, she was very understanding of the situation, and, me having to move out here to take responsibility of the kids and whatnot. But the crazy part about it is that literally I moved to Massachusetts literally 10 days before Layla was born. And so I was able to go back to New York, for her birth and whatnot, but I had to leave that same day. Like, it wasn't something like where I could go stay and, spend time with her. I was there for her birth. I held her, and, and that was it. Like, I had to come back. Because I brought little Ricky with me to New York. Kiana had to stay with her grandmother. And so it was just one of those things where it was very tough. Um, and it was tough because I had to, like, literally abandon my child. Um, and not abandon her in the sense where, like, I wasn't gonna be there for her, but her siblings needed me. And so I had to do what I had to do, right? And over the years, that situation has been complicated, and it sucks, but it's just the way things have been, where I barely see my daughter, but I have a good relationship with her, I would like to think. Her and I, we talk and we communicate, and I check in on her. And whenever I get a chance, if I go to New York, I'll make it a point to go pick her up and spend time with her and do all those, father and daughter things. I kind of wish that things were a little bit different in that situation, but things were really out of my control. Again, no instruction manual or anything saying like, "Hey, Rick, this is gonna happen." You know, you got to do it that way. So that's what it is. So remember, I was a single father from 2009 till 2016 when me and my wife got together. So in between those years, right? I come in, I have the kids, and I'm basically kind of going with like my natural instincts, of being a parent. And, I'm trying to give them the structure that they need, and trying to, incorporate bedtimes, sitting with them and doing homework, and, dinner time, that we're going to sit at the table and have dinner. And, their mother, like I said, the mother was gone for a few years, right? And then we fast forward to 2014. The mom comes back home, and then the dynamics kind of switch up, because from '09 to 2014, it's just me and the kids, and I'm doing my thing with them. And as far as, like, giving them that structure and having that whole, parenting and taking care of them. So when the mom comes back, it definitely switched, because now they're spending a lot more time with her, because she was trying to make up for lost time. And I'm being that understanding person, that regardless of whatever happened, like, that's their mom, and, this and that and the third. Her and I, we had different points of views on certain things. And, I really don't want to dive too deep into that, because, it did cause a lot of friction back in them days. Obviously the kids are already grown up, so We have an amicable relationship. I mean, we really don't deal with each other like that, but whenever we're in the same space or setting, we're amicable. We do it for the kids. But, the holidays became really tough for me because now, in between that time that she was away, I'm trying to make things happen for them, for Christmas and giving them that normalcy, right? Because they had gone through that traumatic experience of their mom going away, which I'm not gonna lie, it really did affect them, especially my son. My son, it got to a point where like I could see signs of like that trauma, rebelling and not listening. He would do bad in school, like he would get in trouble and stuff like that. And so that's when things get crazy because you're trying to explain to them, like you can't be doing this and trying to give them that advice as a parent. Like you're gonna be getting in trouble, like the consequences are gonna affect you. I mean, as a child. But then again, because she was trying to make up for lost time, she was trying to be the friend rather than the parent. And I started noticing the behavior change in them when like they would go spend time with her and come back home. So that's what we kind of had friction in that sense. But parenting is like a roller coaster. You ride a roller coaster, it's gonna have its ups and downs, it's gonna have its loop de loops. You're gonna be you're gonna be screaming in excitement and you're gonna be screaming like you scared because of the thrill. There's a lot of like emotions involved when it comes to parenting. And, from the time when they were living with me before, mom came back into the picture, they were doing good in school. I made sure that they was involved and helping them with homework, parent teacher conferences. Like I even had this thing where like I would buy a composition book, right? And I would basically communicate with the teachers through the composition book. Like I would, they would write to me like, oh, Cardo or Kiana had a good day, blah blah blah. Whatever it is that they went through in the day, like they would communicate with me through the composition book, and I would write back to them in the composition book if I had to address anything or ask them something, and it was cool. It was like a cool system that I had developed with the teachers, and I would always talk to them and communicate with them, and just being involved as far as like how their day to day was going in school. I wanted to make sure that they thrived. That did what they had to do. Just like any parent would. But you can only imagine raising a son and a daughter. Like legit is like learning two different languages without a teacher. It's like basically you're trying to figure it out. you know, she has her needs, he had his needs. I'm trying to be gentle and supportive, for her because she's a girl. And at the same time, I'm trying to teach my son that structure and everything that he needs to be a man in life. So it did get challenging a lot, that's something that's a given. Like it would be super crazy and it could get frustrating a lot, you know what I mean? But that was me working on my patience. Like that's something that I've always lacked is patience. Like I would get frustrated easily, but that was probably my own traumas, that I was dealing with at the time and I didn't recognize it. So a lot of the times there were certain situations that I didn't know how to handle or navigate those feelings and those emotions. And, I might have taken it out on them or whatever the case is. So like looking back, I just be like, damn, like I definitely could have handled that differently. And I even to this day, like I talk to my kids and I always apologize to them, like because I gotta hold myself accountable. Like maybe I didn't apologize to them back then, but I let them know, like, listen, if I ever did something, that might have affected you in some type of way, like I definitely apologize. And, especially my daughter. My daughter, like, she always calling me on a regular, like she's like, Poppy, how you doing? Like, how was your day? Like, I love that, she checks in on me and she genuinely cares like how my day was. And I would always joke around with her because like when she was little, I would like tell her like, you know what, you going through this phase right now, but when you get older, you ain't gonna want to do shit with me. Like you just gonna go about your business. And she'd be like, no, I won't, no, I won't. And it's true. Like she proved me wrong. The boy, he's a lot different. I mean, he be in his own little world, but he occasionally checks in with me. And I love the relationship that I have with my children. Like it's amazing. It's rewarding because it just shows that all the struggles and everything that I went through while raising them, like eventually it paid off. I mean, we had our bumps in the road, just like anything in life, not everything is gonna be a perfect firm road, right? And it's just like how we were going back into, like, there's no instruction manual or booklet like to guide you into doing this, right? Is I feel like I did a decent job and raising my children. I wish that I could have all my children under one roof, you know what I'm saying? Like that I could have raised them all together so that just as any parent would want to have all their kids together, you know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, those were the cards that were dealt. And I had to do the best that I could with that hand that was given to me. Feel me? So, with that being said, to any single parent, guardian, single mother, single father, if you're raising kids on your own, just know that, there's no right or wrong way to do this, right? You do the best that you can, you handle it the best way that you see fit for yourself, and just give them that love that they need and the support, and just be there for them. And but at the end of the day, when they get older, they'll look back and be like, yeah, like, my mom, my dad, or whoever, was there for me, and gave me that love that I needed. I want to thank everybody that tuned in today and listened to this message about, being a parent and raising your child without any guidance or instruction, and if you feel that somebody that they can resonate with this message, or that they might take something out of it, feel free to share with them, have them listen to this story. And that's what I'm here for. I hope to catch y'all next time. We're gonna be working on episode 3 for next week. So y'all know the vibes. Y'all have an amazing day. God bless, and still your boy.